All right, buckle up, because today we are diving headfirst into the world of missile defense. Specifically, THAAD. You said in this Wikipedia article, so clearly you're ready to go deeper on this one. Way deeper than just knowing it's not about a TIE deity.
It's definitely more high-tech than that.
Fair.
We're talking about a system designed to take out ballistic missiles mid-flight, like a super sophisticated shield.
A shield in the sky. That's a pretty wild concept when you think about it. And what's fascinating to me is that the story of THAAD starts not in some high-tech lab, but with a very real threat. Those Scud missile attacks during the Gulf War back in 1991.
Yeah, those attacks were a turning point, really. They exposed the need for more effective missile defense, and THAAD was born from that urgency.
So from this terrifying situation, this whole idea for a missile shield takes root. But our deep dive into this Wikipedia article, it reveals that actually building this thing was no walk in the park.
Not at all. I mean, the initial proposal, it actually dates back to 1987, even before the Gulf War. But the program faced a lot of hurdles. Budget cuts, early test failures, you name it.
Okay, so let's unpack that for a second. We're talking about hitting a bullet with another bullet, right? That level of precision has to be insanely difficult to achieve.
Oh, absolutely. Just imagine the complexity of a system that can track a missile traveling thousands of miles per hour.
Mhm.
And not just track it, but actually intercept it. The Wikipedia article even mentions this thing called the aero-optical effect, AOE, as a major obstacle that they had to overcome.
AOE.
Yeah.
Lay that one on me.
Okay, so picture this. Air flowing around a super fast object, like a missile. It creates distortions, kind of like when you see heat waves shimmering off the pavement.
Okay.
And this distortion, it can really mess with tracking systems. So they had to make absolutely sure that THAAD could, see accurately, even with all of that interference.
Talk about a technical headache. So
Yeah.
how do they even begin to tackle something like that?
Well, it required a massive collaborative effort. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, these weren't just any tech companies. They were bringing out like the big guns in terms of engineering and scientific brainpower.
A real dream team of defense tech.
Yeah.
But what's really striking from the article is that even with all that brain power, those early years of THAAD, they were full of misses.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally. From 1995 to 1999, there were more failures than successes.
Wow.
That's 4 years of constant refinement, testing, and tweaking before they even had a consistently working prototype.
That level of persistence is amazing. They could have easily given up, but they just kept at it.
Yeah, and that persistence paid off, because by 1999, they finally cracked the code. They were successfully intercepting missiles, proving that this hit-to-kill concept wasn't just some, sci-fi pipe dream.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Because it wasn't enough to just prove that THAAD could work on a test range. This was always about real-world protection.
Absolutely. And by 2008, the first THAAD battery was deployed and ready for action.
So where did this high-tech shield make its debut?
The United Arab Emirates.
The UAE. Why there?
Well, think about it. The UAE's location, in a region that's already grappling with Iran's missile program, it made it a strategically vital spot.
Oh.
Remember, THAAD is all about countering those short to medium-range threats, exactly what Iran presented.
So it wasn't just about having the technology. It was about deploying it where it would make the biggest impact.
Exactly. And it wasn't just sitting there idle either. In 2022, THAAD had its first real-world success story. It intercepted a hostile ballistic missile that had been launched by Houthi forces in Yemen.
Wow. So from concept to combat proven in a matter of a few decades, that's incredible.
Yeah, it really highlights how critical missile defense has become in today's world. But the UAE, that was just the beginning. THAAD's deployments soon expanded to other strategic locations, Israel, Romania, and perhaps the most controversial of them all, South Korea.
Ah, yeah, South Korea. Now that deployment really stirred the geopolitical pot, didn't it?
It did. China and Russia weren't exactly thrilled.
And why was that? What were their concerns about THAAD in South Korea?
Well, China especially worried that THAAD's powerful radar system, which is used to detect incoming missiles, could also be used to track their own missile launches. They argued it gave the U.S. an unfair advantage.
So it wasn't just about defending South Korea from North Korea. It became a whole geopolitical chess match.
Precisely. And it put South Korea in a very tough spot, caught between its alliance with the U.S. and its economic relationship with China.
So how did the U.S. respond to all of this?
Well, they maintained that THAAD was purely defensive, aimed solely at North Korea, and that the radar wasn't sophisticated enough to track Chinese missiles the way they feared. They even offered to let China verify this claim.
But even those reassurances, I mean, they weren't enough to completely soothe those anxieties, right?
No, not really. They didn't really bridge that trust gap. And it goes to show that even with something like missile defense, which is inherently defensive in nature, those geopolitical concerns can really muddy the waters.
It's a good reminder that technology, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's always intertwined with these larger global dynamics. But for our listener who sent in this Wikipedia article, let's bring it back to the tech itself for a moment, this hit-to-kill technology. It almost seems too good to be true when you really think about it. Can you walk us through how that actually works?
Yeah, it might sound like something out of a movie, but the science behind it is very real. The THAAD interceptor, unlike conventional missiles, it doesn't carry any explosive warheads. Instead, it leverages its kinetic energy, essentially the sheer force of impact, to obliterate that incoming threat.
So we are talking about a high-speed collision, but on an entirely different level, right?
Absolutely. Picture this. The interceptor, rocketing through the atmosphere, slams into its target at a combined speed of over 6,000 miles per hour.
6,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's like crossing the entire continental U.S. in the time it takes to watch a sitcom.
Yeah, that's the kind of speed and force we're talking about. And at that velocity, the impact generates enough energy to completely destroy both the interceptor and the incoming missile.
Wow.
It's really a testament to just the meticulous engineering involved in all of this.
The Wikipedia article actually breaks down the THAAD interceptor itself. Like, it even gets into the size and weight. I was surprised to learn it's actually heavier than my car.
And significantly faster.
Right.
It's propelled by a single-stage, solid-fueled rocket motor that allows it to achieve those, frankly, mind-boggling speeds.
So this rocket-powered projectile is hurtling through the sky at these, like, hypersonic speeds, all to intercept another missile that's also moving incredibly fast.
Yeah.
But how does it even find its target amidst all that clutter up there?
That's where the real magic happens. THAAD relies on a sophisticated network of sensors and radars to lock onto those incoming threats. And the real workhorse in all of this is the ANTPY-2 radar.
That's the same powerful radar that had China worried, right?
The very same. It's an incredibly sensitive X-band radar, meaning it operates at a specific frequency that's optimized for detecting objects in the atmosphere. This radar can detect and track ballistic missiles across incredibly vast distances.
So if I'm picturing this correctly, this radar is essentially THAAD's eyes, constantly scanning for potential threats. That's incredible.
It is, but it's not just about seeing those threats. It's about making split-second decisions. Once the radar identifies a potential target, that data gets relayed to the THAAD fire control system. This system is like THAAD's brain, analyzing the threat and deciding on the best course of action.
So it's not just about shooting down every blip on the radar. There's a whole decision-making process involved here.
Exactly. Remember, THAAD is a defensive system. It's not about indiscriminate firing. It's about calculated protection.
Right.
The fire control system, it analyzes the incoming missile's trajectory, its speed, other factors, to determine if it actually poses a genuine threat to the defended area. If it doesn't, no interceptor is launched.
That makes sense. So the radar sees the potential threat, the fire control system assesses it, and then if action is needed, what then? How does the interceptor actually hit its target with such precision at those speeds?
Well, once the launch command is given, the interceptor relies on its onboard guidance system, which includes something called an infrared seeker head.
Infrared, is that anything like those heat-seeking missiles you see in,
In a way, yes.
Okay.
The infrared seeker detects the heat signature of the incoming missile.
Yep.
You see, even in the vastness of space, objects, they radiate heat.
Right.
And this heat signature is like a beacon for the interceptor. It allows it to lock onto its target and adjust its course accordingly, even during those final critical moments of flight.
So we're talking about a combination of incredible speed and incredible precision. But even with a system as advanced as THAAD, there's always the question of what comes next, DD, right? Technology never stands still.
You're absolutely right, and this is where the Wikipedia article mentions a particularly intriguing development. THAAD-R.
THAAD-R. What's that all about?
It stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Extended Range, and it represents a potential next step in missile defense. It's designed to tackle a whole new level of threat.
A new level of threat. What could be more challenging than hitting a bullet with another bullet?
How about hitting a bullet that's moving at 5, even 10 times the speed of sound and constantly changing direction? That's the challenge posed by hypersonic missiles.
Hypersonic missiles. Those are the ones we keep hearing about in the news, right? The ones that are almost impossible to intercept.
Exactly. They're faster, they're more maneuverable, and they represent a whole new ballgame when it comes to missile defense. And that's precisely the problem that THAAD is being designed to solve.
So if THAAD is like this high-tech shield, THAAD is like giving that shield a major power-up.
That's a great way to put it. While the specifics are still under wraps, we're likely talking about a more powerful booster rocket, possibly upgrades to the guidance system, all with the goal of catching these incredibly elusive targets. Imagine the existing range of THAAD, and then picture it extending even further, allowing for intercepts at much greater distances.
It's amazing how quickly things evolve. We've gone from worrying about Scuds to facing down these hypersonic threats in just a few decades. It really highlights just how rapid the pace of technological advancement is, especially in the realm of defense.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to THAAD either. The whole field of missile defense is just buzzing with new technologies. We're talking directed energy weapons, railguns, stuff that used to be pure science fiction.
Laser beams and like electromagnetic cannons. It does sound like something straight out of Star Wars.
Yeah,
But that's the reality we're moving towards, isn't it?
it is. The future of warfare is changing before our very eyes, and systems like THAAD and THAAD are giving us a glimpse into what that future might look like.
It's both fascinating and a little daunting at the same time, to be honest.
Yeah.
But at least we know there are some incredibly bright minds working on staying ahead of those threats.
That's a very reassuring thought. And it underscores the importance of understanding these technologies, not just from a technical standpoint, but also in terms of their strategic implications and the global dynamics that they influence.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about understanding the why behind the what. And on that note, let's take a moment to recap everything we've learned about THAAD so far, because it's quite a lot to digest.
Indeed. Perhaps the best place to start is with the fundamental purpose of THAAD, what it's designed to do, and how it achieves that objective.
Right, exactly. Let's bring it back to basics for a sec. For a listener who's been digging into this Wikipedia article, what are the key takeaways about what THAAD is designed to do and how it actually works?
Well, at its core, THAAD is a purely defensive system. Its sole purpose is to intercept and then neutralize those short, medium, and intermediate range ballistic missiles. And it does this through this incredible hit-to-kill technology that we've been discussing.
Right?
No explosive warheads, just pure kinetic energy.
Wow.
A high-speed collision that basically obliterates the threat.
It really speaks to just insane amount of precision engineering that goes into this system. I mean, we've talked about that powerful radar that acts as THAAD's eyes, the fire control system that's essentially its brain, and then the interceptor itself, which is like a hypersonic bullet designed to take out another bullet.
And what's really remarkable is that this technology, as advanced as it is, it actually stemmed from a very specific threat, those Scud missile attacks during the Gulf War.
Yeah.
It really highlights how those real-world events can often drive innovation.
They really do. And in the case of THAAD, that innovation didn't stop there. I mean, we've seen it evolve over time with deployments in all these strategically important locations like the UAE, where it actually engaged a hostile missile in 2022.
Yeah, that interception was a defining moment for THAAD. It proved just how effective it could be, even in a real-world scenario.
Right.
But as we've seen with the South Korea deployment, even a purely defensive system like this can become entangled in these complex geopolitical dynamics.
It's true. That's the thing about technology, isn't it? It doesn't exist in some kind of bubble.
It doesn't.
It influences and is influenced by like the entire world around it.
Right.
And the development of THAAD, which is designed to counter those hypersonic threats we were talking about, it shows just how rapidly this field is advancing.
Yeah, THAAD, it's a perfect example of how innovation is often driven by this need to stay one step ahead of whatever those emerging threats might be. Hypersonic missiles, with their speed and maneuverability, they really do represent a significant leap in terms of offensive capabilities.
Yeah.
And THAAD, well, if it lives up to its promise, it could be a real game changer in terms of maintaining that defensive edge.
It's like a constant technological arms race in a way, with each side pushing the boundaries of what's even possible.
Totally.
But even beyond the technology itself, what I find especially interesting are the broader implications, like the geopolitical chess match that unfolds alongside all of these developments.
Absolutely. I mean, take the example of THAAD in South Korea. It wasn't just about North Korea, right? It was about China's concerns. It was about the balance of power in the region, all the economic and diplomatic considerations. It's like a whole web of interconnected factors.
Yeah, it really underscores that we don't just live in a world of technology. We live in a world that is actively shaped by it.
Absolutely.
So for our listener who's been delving into the world of THAAD through this Wikipedia article, what would you say is like the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think the most crucial thing to remember is that a system like THAAD, for all its technical sophistication, it's ultimately a tool. And like any tool, its impact, it really depends on how it's used and the context in which it's deployed. Understanding the technology is obviously important, but understanding that geopolitical landscape, the motivations of the players involved, well, that's just as crucial, in my opinion.
It's about connecting those dots, isn't it?
Yeah.
Understanding how something like missile defense fits into this bigger picture of global security and, how nations interact with each other.
Exactly.
And that's something that I hope we've been able to achieve with this deep dive, to provide not just information about THAAD, but also some context and perhaps even some food for thought.
I completely agree. It's all about sparking curiosity, encouraging people to keep exploring these topics.
Absolutely. And on that note, we've reached the end of our THAAD deep dive. A huge thank you to you for lending your incredible knowledge to this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and, hey, maybe even a little bit mind-blowing.
Hear, hear.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing, and remember, there's always more to learn.